Welcome to The Sober Unicorn. We are a gay-hosted, all-inclusive podcast about sobriety and addiction recovery for the LGBT plus community and all of our allies. I am your host, Holden, and thank you for joining us today. Hey, everybody's Holden back here again with The Sober Unicorn. I hope everybody's having a fabulous day. And if you are not having a good day, hopefully it does get better. Today we are being joined by a fellow podcaster. He runs the Rick or Treat Horrorcast, available Spotify, Apple Music. Kind of talks about everything horror, whether it comes to TV shows, Disney villains, horror movies, everything like that. And it's a very fun, entertaining podcast. I listened to a couple episodes yesterday, and they're very good. So I do recommend checking that out. But today, at least, we'll be discussing Ricky's journey of recovery. His journey is very different than mine. So this is definitely going to be educational for me and hopefully will help everybody else out. So how are you doing, Ricky?
I'm excellent. Thank you very much. I'm so happy you had me.
Of course, of course. So I mean, before we jump into the recovery side of things, how has everything been with your horror podcast?
It's been a journey. Let me tell. Everybody told me it was going to be a lot of work starting a podcast, and I believed them, but I underestimated how much work it was going to be. But it's a passion project. I love horror movies. I love like talking about how they relate to the queer experience. A lot of filmmakers and a lot of horror creators are gay people, you know? I mean, Don Mancini, who created Chucky, Kevin Williamson, who wrote Scream, or James Whale, who all the way back directing Frankenstein and The Bride of Frankenstein. I mean, the queer fingerprint is all over the genre. So it's fun to every week analyze and kiki and talk about it. And I have a different guest every week. So I'd love to have you on it soon, and we'll pick a movie. We'll pick something scary.
Of course, I do love horror movies. There's one specific horror movie that I have seen probably 50 times, but every time I see it, there's one scene in the movie that like fully gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Oh my God, what is
It's
it?
13 Ghosts.
The remake? It's so good.
No, I don't know if it's the remake or the original
Is it in color or black and white?
color.
It's the remake. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. It's when all of them are like it's at the very end when they're all like chanting and the family's like in the middle. For some reason that just it sends chills down my spine every time.
All right. I would love to review that movie on my podcast, and I promise I will have you when I
Yes,
do. You want to do it?
of course. Hell yeah, that'd be
Good.
so much fun. So now jumping into Journey of Recovery. Why don't you kind of give everybody like, well, of course you're Ricky, so we have your name. Tell everybody how long you've been sober and which like your drug of choice was.
Sure. On October 8th of this year, 2022, I had 1 year clean and sober, which is mind blowing to me. I was a drinker, and I love cocaine, really. That was, I mean, that it maddening to me thinking back of how much coke I used to do. And then toward the end of my days engaging in substances, I got into meth as well. I had done other drugs, mushrooms or ketamine, but and weed, those were never that interesting to me. Meth was never that interesting to me. But I mean, I guess we'll probably get to that as I tell a little bit more of my story.
Like
It
meth is
sneaks
never
in.
that.
It sneaks in.
Meth is never that interesting until you start smoking it, and then you're just like, oh, this is super interesting.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I'm very similar with the alcohol being primary, cocaine, and then meth played into it as well. I touched on other narcotics such as heroin. Never liked it. Thank God. That's probably like a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
And congratulations on your year.
Thank you very much.
That is a huge trek. I know. If anybody's listened to my past episode, October 23rd would have been my year. If I had not suffered two relapses, but technically I have abstained from drinking at least for the year.
That's great.
Like
That's wonderful.
my relapses were on other drugs, but at least I stayed away from liquor. So kind of give everybody a backstory of kind of where you were in your addiction and what finally lit up and like was that saving grace to you? Like, holy shit, I have to get sober.
Sure. I didn't grow up a wild child at all. My parents, I can maybe count on one hand the times that I ever saw them drink. And, we grew up in a pretty religious household. Um, and it wasn't until honestly maybe my mid 20s. I had had drinks before. I had done the whole, early 20s drinking thing, but it was my mid 20s when things really started getting out of control. It's so funny, I'm an actor, and I remember thinking to myself, as an actor I just need to experience everything, and I remember cocaine being on the list of like things I just wanted to try to see what it was like. And the first time I ever did it, I was working at a bar here in New York City and went down to the bathroom, and somebody gave me a bump. And I remember he looked at me in the eyes and he said, "There, isn't everything better?" And I just thought, yeah, it is. Now that guy's in recovery now, as it turns out. Um, and from there, it led to a decade of cocaine use. And it was there was not a time where it was subsiding. It was just a part of my life. I've worked in bars and restaurants for all God, coming up on 18 years now. Geez Louise. Um, and in that culture, in that industry, it's drugs and alcohol are very prevalent. And I had attempted recovery a couple of times. The first time after my mom passed away about 8 years ago was the first time that I attempted recovery in AA. And I lasted 11 days and then went right back out. And then it would be kind of like every couple years, I would try recovery again. And it wasn't landing in my brain. Why do you keep going through this again and again and again, right? Um, things got I think the longest I ever had was 7 months. And then I just remember clear as day being in the middle of a busy, stressful work shift and knowing what I was going to do when I got out of work, you know? And I did it and didn't look back. It got really, really out of hand. I mean, the pandemic was hard on everyone. And so I certainly don't blame the pandemic. I don't blame the pandemic, and I don't blame the service industry for, the path that my life took, but I don't think that either of them helped either. Um, Around the end of last summer, it was drink, cocaine, repeat, drink, cocaine, repeat nonstop to the point that I would be awake on coke for 2 days at a time and calling people like at weird hours trying to get them to come to my apartment to bring me more coke. Now I didn't have the money for this. I don't know. You find ways, you know what I mean? You find the money for it. uh and I being a year now and looking back at where things were, just the fact that I can breathe through both nostrils is something that I appreciate. um the fact that as I remember trying to come down, and I would chug 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 alcohol to try to calm myself down, and I would smoke weed at the same time. It's a wonder I didn't have a stroke, or a heart attack at the rate that I was going. Now toward the end of it, I live in Hell's Kitchen, New York City, and if you get on Grinder or Scruff, in this particular block where I'm at, I'm surrounded by hotels, right? These are the hotels where escorts hang out, and these escorts are oftentimes having P&P sessions, like, meth parties. So it was very accessible for me. And if I was in the mindset, because I would continue to use because I didn't want the party to end. I didn't want to come down. I didn't want to be alone, which is so weird because I was pushing everybody away while I was doing this. So I started hanging out, with these uh P&P escorts, and they would bring drugs over. And the first couple times I thought, I don't I don't do meth. I'm just going to do it now, you know? And then I do it again. No, I don't do meth. I don't know. It's not for me. And it was maybe the fourth or fifth time when I realized, oh shit, I do meth now, you know? Um, it never interested me. Here's the thing. I never liked it. I can admit that I liked cocaine. I never liked meth. I didn't like the way that it tasted. I didn't like the way that it made me feel. And for a drug that is so centered on sex culture in the gay community, the it the sex was not a good experience for me personally, you know. And maybe it's because I was on others, you know. I would always turn to meth after a night of cocaine, so I was already on one substance already. So this got so out of control. um I reached out to someone who I had met months and months before one time, who told me that he was in recovery, and he could tell I was shaking when we met. You know, it was a hookup, and I wasn't fucked up at the time, but I was shaking because I was hungover. And he could tell, and he told me that he was in recovery. And I randomly texted him, and he was like, "Dude, just go to a hospital." You know, no, I'd been to a hospital many, many years before, after my mom passed, and so I looked around at my life. I looked at those people in my life who were still there for me. And I reached out to my best friend, who, she didn't know that I was using again. How I kept this a secret, I will never know. Like, I'm an actor. I'm not that good of an actor, right? Um Mind blowing to me. I think that because she loves me so much, she wasn't looking for it, and I wasn't letting her see it. I had two lives. I had my after hours bar, drink all night. You know, they'd leave the bar open past closing time for industry people, you know, servers and bartenders, to hang out and drink. And then when they kicked us out of there, we would either go to the bar across the street that opened at 8 a.m., or we would go to somebody's apartment and keep partying. And again, my MO was to keep this party going. So when everybody else was done and ready to go home and call it a night or a morning or whatever, I wasn't. I was still trying to find a way to keep, you know, keep partying. Uh, that side of my friend group knew all about it, and then the other side, the other friends, the ones who I had known for many, many years, who are my family, my tribe, did not know. uh, I told her, I sent her a text message. I said, I'm going to the hospital. You know, I'm fucked up. I've been awake for a couple days. Now, my birthday was October 3rd. And on October 7th is when I text her. So I got very little sleep for about 4 days, 4 or 5 days, you know, maybe a total of 6 hours. She was upset, obviously, called me immediately. Um, and she said, you know, Ricky, I've seen you in a hospital before, and that didn't work for you in the past. And she looked up rehab options for me, and she found a rehab. She made all of the arrangements, and she picked me up the next morning and drove me to Pennsylvania. It was about a 4 hour drive, and took me to a rehab, kind of outdoors, you know, or kind of woodsy. And you know, a rehab in New York, she felt was not going to help me. She felt that I needed to be outside. I needed trees. I needed air. I needed to touch grass. And she was right. Now, not everybody has this opportunity. You know, not everybody gets the chance to go to rehab. Not everybody's best friend is going to make arrangements for them to go. And I think a couple things happened. I realized she gave me tough love, which is not something that I think she'd ever done to me before. And she said, this is a chance that I'm not going to be able to help you with again, you know?" Um, and it just stayed in my bones. And I took it very seriously. I, one of the counselors, one of the therapists at that rehab, I was like, why is it working now? Why do I feel like now is the time? And he said, this is an epiphany. Like, you've had enough, you know? And it's true. Looking around at my life, it wasn't good enough for me at all. Now, while I was in that rehab, we every night had to either go to like a group therapy session or an AA session. So one of the group therapy was for mental health, and AA was for obviously substance recovery. Now, as I'm in rehab, I'm getting to know my mental illness. I knew that I had depression. I knew that I had anxiety. I had not been treating these things at all. I mean, I was, but with, the wrong kind of medication, the wrong drugs. So I my attempts at sobriety in the past revolved around AA. And as I mentioned earlier, I did grow up in a religious home, and I do feel an extent, a good amount of religious trauma. It's one of the things that I work through in therapy. And AA was not working for me, and it hadn't in the past. And I knew this. And for many reasons, and I do not poo poo AA, I don't shit on it. It works for so many people. It really, really does. It did not work for me. Even the chapter to the agnostic still doesn't. That's the chapter in the big book that they tell you to read if you don't believe in God. Well, agnostic still means you believe in something. I'm an
Mhm.
atheist. You're not helping me. And the chapter to the agnostic still tells you, well, you never know until you try to believe in God. Like, that's what it comes down to. So for me, I was very put off by it. Um, and I didn't know what to do. The 12 steps have value. They really do. You work through some shit working through those 12 steps. AA also has the accessibility and the fellowship going for it as well. You can find AA everywhere, and people will take you in. People will help you, and that's wonderful. It just didn't connect for me. So, what are my other options, right? One of the therapists there told me about smart recovery, self management, and recovery training. And it's a program that is based on cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is essentially retraining your brain to analyze things differently. It's kind of like what are the results of an action, and are the results worth this action? The handbook, I have it right next to me, has little worksheets. I love a worksheet. Oh my god, I love a worksheet so much. And the one that really got me, it's called the cost benefit analysis chart. So if you take a piece of paper and you draw a line down the middle horizontally and a line down the middle vertically, you've got 4 squares, right? One square, you write cons for whatever your problem is. So the example will be drinking. Cons, long-term cons for drinking, long-term pros for drinking, short-term cons for drinking, short-term pros for drinking. And be honest, what are the short-term pros for having a drink? I'm going to have fun. I'm going to let loose for a couple hours. I'm going to be social. I'm going to see some people. What are the long-term pros for drinking? I can't list a single fucking one,
Mhm.
right? Because those short-term cons are, I'm going to blow all my money. I'm going to get sick for the next week. I'm not going to stop drinking. I'm going to end up doing meth. Long-term cons are, I'm going to lose my friends. I'm going to lose my apartment. I'm going to lose, everything. So looking at the reasons to drink, it is never in a million years going to be like, it's never going to make sense when I also look at those cons. And for some reason, that's what worked in my brain. That's what told me enough is enough. It's never going to work out the way that I want it to. I had to get over the fact that I can watch other people do a line of Coke and then stop themselves. I had to get over that. I can't. And whether it's like a biological addiction or it's in my head, it doesn't matter. The fact is, I can't do it. Now, this is going to sound controversial. Another thing with AA was that I struggled with, for me personally, was saying that I was powerless over alcohol because it made me feel weak. And maybe that's a little bit part of the point, but it did not help me personally. Instead of sitting in a room and listening to people tell how they got there, I was at a point where I needed to hear stories of solutions, answers that did not tell me to rely on a higher power because I didn't believe in one, you know?
Yeah, what's
Um,
crazy is talking about that is I also went into a 12-step fellowship via an atheist. Um, and I still struggle with that balance of higher power with atheism and trying to believe in something, but yet not believing in something. And the term God almost completely pulled me away. Like I left the meet for my first meeting that I went to. I left wanting to go to the bar and get fucked up.
yeah.
And so the thing is what I've learned. I mean, as you said, when you went to rehab, how you needed the trees, you needed the nature, you needed that. To me, like for at least for now, my higher power like is not a god, it's not a person, it's not a being. For me, it's like the universe, the nature, the world around us. And the being powerless, how I perceive it, yes, it does of course make you feel weak, and I think as you said, that's kind of the point, to help you break down and realize that you don't have the control over the liquor. But I mean, for me, I it's hard to say I am powerless, but I think it's I'm powerless over after the first drink. I
Hmm.
have the power until I have the first drink.
Yeah.
But once that first drink hits, as you said, you're gonna drink, you're gonna get fucked up, you're gonna be out for a week, you're gonna do meth, and people that just drink on occasion or can have a glass of wine, they look at me and they're just like, "How does a drink lead you to meth?" It's like
Because
trying
I
to,
will have more drinks in 1 week than you have in an entire year.
yes,
I mean, realistically, right? That was my case. It's just it's not a comparison. I'm always gonna win. I'm always gonna win when it comes to a drinking competition, you know?
exactly. And I
Um,
mean, anybody listening that is AA based, NA based, CMA based, whatever it may be, um, this is not an episode to try to belittle or dog that program or any 12
not in
step
the
fellowship.
least. Yeah, not at all.
That's actually one reason I wanted to have Ricky on it discussing this, the cognitive behavioral therapy, because 12 step fellowships is not for everybody. Some people just aren't okay with it, they don't feel comfortable. And I wanted somebody that has experience in the CBT and smart recovery to share their experience, to know that there are other venues um, that can get you sober without a 12 step fellowship.
Absolutely. And taking it back to you mentioning, nature being the higher power, I'm all about it. That was the direction that I was taking. If I talk about my religious trauma, it is just kind of the setup and the use of the word God that became triggering for me. And so, I'm not saying that it cannot work for an atheist, because it certainly can, or for an agnostic, because it certainly can. I was just in a situation where, I wasn't able to break free from my upbringing in order to relate to the program. And like you said, I'm certainly not trying to downplay its value, because it has helped so many people. It just didn't help me. And if there's anything that if there's anything that I can say to leave like an impression, it would be, if what you're doing is not working, you have to find something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You might be told that the program that you're involved in is the end all be all, but if it's not working for you, it's not. And don't try to make something fit that's not going to fit, because that's what I was doing with drugs for years and it didn't work. You gotta look into other programs. There's recovery dharma, which is meditation and Buddhism, kind of based on meditative practices. uh, there are programs out there. There are, other ways
There's
to do
Matt
it.
Recovery, and
Yes.
I know Dharma. I was supposed to have a guest that did that recovery, but she unfortunately suffered a relapse, and I think she's been out of the program. But going back to, of course, we in 12 step fellowships, when we hit a struggle point, the tools of recovery, which is pause, pray, rely on a higher power, is what helps assist us to get over that hump of when we're wanting to drink. So for you, working smart recovery and CBT, when you hit circumstances that you're like, shit, I just want to go have a drink, like what tools do those programs give you to overcome that?
So CBT is about retraining your brain. Neuro pathways. This blew my mind learning about it. I'm going to try to make this succinct and quick. Think of, like, if I tell myself I'm a worthless piece of shit, I'm a worthless piece of shit again and again, my brain takes it seriously. And that you train your brain to learn that, right? You carve neural pathways inside physically, like literally inside of your brain. So when your brain sets off these thoughts, that's the direction that they're always going to take. You have to retrain that. You have to stop thinking that way, and you have to retrain the way that your mind works and the direction that it works to lessen that effect. Now, it takes years, obviously, right? I have a lifetime of trauma to work through and, engaging in substances to work through. So, maybe that's why mantras work for some people, because you're repeating like an affirmation. No matter what it is, it's science, you know? So retraining those neural pathways. Now, I'm really lucky. I'm on the drug naltrexone, which suppresses cravings for alcohol. It's the same part of your brain that suppresses alcohol cravings as opioids. I never got opioids, thank God. So I think that might certainly help, but sometimes I wonder if this year was a little easier than, you know what? I'm not going to say that. My attempts at recovery in the past were never easy. Something is different this time. And you know what it is? I don't feel like I have to be in recovery. I feel like I want to be in recovery this time. And for me, that's made all of the difference. Bringing up the Smart Recovery Handbook, that's that cost benefit analysis chart that I mentioned is not the only activity in there. So you can turn to almost any page and you'll get a little worksheet to work on, that just helps me understand different. It almost always comes out to the same thing, which is it's never going to end up the way that I want it to, right? And I'm an emotional person. I react rather than respond, and I'm working on that, you know? Uh, and if I can instead respond to these feelings instead of react to them, then I think I'm making progress. But if I mean, just like in AA, when they say play the tape, right? You know what's going to happen. I, I don't even have to play the tape anymore. I just know. Now, I work in a restaurant now. In rehab, I was worried about going back to work in a restaurant. I do serve wine to people, I bring people their drinks. I don't bartend anymore. That is something I'm not interested in. I don't want to tempt fate. I don't like the culture, but serving tables, I'm an actor. It's what you do in New York. And I'm fine with it. Not everybody is, and I don't go out with my coworkers. I'm not necessarily close with them, but I gotta say, I'm really good at my job, and I don't think that I always was when I was, using. I would come to work without sleep, or I would come to work and be doing coke in the bathroom. And now I can actually focus on the guest experience. And something about this is going to sound weird, something about carrying those drinks to people. I feel a certain amount of strength in not even thinking twice about it. I look at it as product now as opposed to a drink. Like, it's product. It's helping me and build the sales in my check, which is going to get me money. It's going to get me a bigger tip the more that I sell. I don't think twice about it. Um, and so I guess I'm lucky also to not be triggered in that environment. I do go home right after work and I hang out with my cat. And oh my God, I have a better relationship with my cat now too. My poor cat saw some crazy shit back when I was using, bless him. Uh, and now I've got a great relationship with him and I appreciate him. And I think he's happier too. I know he's happier. I'm
Yeah, and I
happier.
mean, talking about you being in the service industry, I had a guest on. I don't know if you've heard the episode. I believe his name was Andy with Ben's Friends. It's a group for people in recovery that work in the restaurant industry
Wow.
because they realize how hard it can be. I mean, I have a friend that's a bartender that's in recovery, and the industry in itself is very known for people drinking behind the bar, people doing coke in the bathroom. I mean, it's the servers. I mean, I have not worked in the restaurant industry, like as a server before, but know that it can be very hard on and taxing on people's mental health, which causes them to get a shit table, and then them go do a bump so they can have the energy to go deal with somebody else. Um, but yeah, Ben's friends, and also it's interesting how you said you looked at this product because there's an episode coming out this Friday. By the time this episode comes out, that'll be released. But um, it's a guy that went into recovery that was a oh my god, he made beer. He literally made beer for a distillery, like a barrel company. I can't remember what it's called, but it's crazy to me how people in recovery are able to work around around alcohol and not be tempted. I mean, you're a year in. I think nowadays, if I went and worked at a bar, I'd be fine. But I mean, 30 days in, there would have been no fucking way that
Well,
I
yeah,
could
and
have.
I think being in rehab for that first 30 days also helped me get past it too. Because if I was working at that bar that I was working at beforehand, before rehab, I mean, there's no way. And I couldn't picture myself not working at that bar. That's the thing too. It was so part of my New York City identity, working at this specific, very world famous bar, that I couldn't picture myself not working there until I was removed, and had to remove myself from it. And now it's like I have a whole new side of New York City ahead of me, right? I know the seedy nightlife side. I've been to every after hours bar in the city. I've done all of that. But now I've got an entirely new New York City that I'm falling in love with, and that's amazing to me. Like, that's a real gift of recovery, is thinking that I was, this jaded, cynical New Yorker, been here for 12 years, and now there's so much more to it. I mean, it's not all pretty, don't get me wrong.
That is
But I
very
love it,
true. I've been
you
to New
know?
York, and it's a very interesting city.
It sure is. It sure is.
So, how
Uh,
is your relationship with your friends now that you are sober?
you know, the friends that I told you about, who I was drinking and drugging with, are not bad people. They're not. We don't see each other anymore because our lives are different. Our lives don't line up. Our schedules don't line up, They're uh, I'm just not in touch with them. The people who didn't know what was going on are now, I I am grateful to be able to be present for them how they were present for me. And I'm sharing joyous occasions. I was at my best friend's wedding sober. It was a whole week-long celebration, uh, in Long Island, and I was sober the entire time. I was able to be present. I was able to be helpful instead of the morning of the wedding, where I would have been pouring everybody mimosas, and I would have been chugging them myself, and I would have been getting everybody else drunk. So I felt better about me being drunk. I was able to help her get dressed. I was able, to help organize the day and be a real part of it, and not embarrass myself and not embarrass anybody else. And that
It's
means the world to me.
it's insane on how much more we're able to be involved in people's lives
Yeah.
when we are not worried about like running for the bottle or the next shot, and we're able to be present in the situation and be completely cognitive to what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're treating people.
Yeah.
Because when drinking, the amount of shit that I would talk to people because I thought it was funny. And I mean, here I am at a bar just making fun of people, talking shit straight to their face because I thought it was hilarious. And now that I'm sober, I'm just like, holy shit, was I a piece of shit person? Like, how did I have any friends? So the friend that um made the arrangements for your rehab, are y'all still friends?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We are, we're recording this obviously before it will be dropped. Today's her birthday. And yes, and so happy birthday. I love you very much. And uh I mean, she's my family. Her family is my family, and I think showing that love that came from her and her family when I was so lost, uh is also what helped me really realize. I mean, it's just I don't think that I let myself feel it before fully. I don't think that I let myself feel love because I was so distracted, and my brain and my heart were drugged and drunk. And so I wasn't appreciating, and I wasn't recognizing or seeing it. And so now being able to see it and feel it is a sensation better than any drug.
It's crazy how the friends that we find in recovery, I mean you of course knew her while you were using, but I mean the friends that we develop that support our recovery, I think become some of the most authentic, genuine, and long-term friendships that we will have in our lives.
Yeah.
Because all they want is to see you just be a better fucking human and not literally killing yourself slowly. Because that's ultimately what we were doing to ourselves.
Yeah. If I didn't go to rehab last October, I don't think I would have made it through last Christmas. The path that my brain was on, the thoughts that I was having, I think that I was getting so into uppers, I think I was going to start turning to downers pretty soon. And that, I think that would have been the end of me. And I just, my God.
Yeah, especially you said you deal with depression and anxiety. If you started the downers, that would have been, I mean, as you said, the end of everything. Because if
Yeah.
you were not treating something that already makes you mentally down, and then you're adding an actual
Yeah.
chemical downer,
And I would
that
have been using them to come down from how high I was, which would have, I mean, I could see myself
yeah, our bodies. I don't
perishing.
know how our bodies handled what we have put them through.
I don't either, but I gotta tell you, I am paying the price for it now.
So one thing that I noticed though, you talked about one thing that you have used kind of through the 12 step fellowship is playing the tape board.
Yeah.
The thing is, the most important thing that I've learned in recovery, whether you step into a 12-step meeting room of, and then you go into smart recovery, and then you go into mat recovery, and then you go into dharma, whatever it is, like take what you want and leave the rest.
Yes.
The thing is, you like there's a guest named Charlie. I believe it was episode 4. I mean, he went to 36 rehabs, I believe it was, and because of all the different types of recovery that he had to go through. It's he just picked and pulled from
Yeah.
each different venue, and the thing is, not one set way of recovery is the correct way. And so, if you have to pull tidbits from every single different avenue of recovery to get you to stay sober, then that's what you need to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't stay somewhere that you're not comfortable in. That's for damn sure.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. It like I mentioned before, the fellowship and the accessibility of AA is absolutely wonderful. And that is something, not being involved in the program is being able to meet other sober people, because even the friends in my life, the friends who I value and, have become even more cherishable to me, I don't have a lot of sober friends surrounding me. And sometimes it might feel, it would be nice just to be able to have that conversation. And
100%.
while smart recovery, a lot of their meetings are online. There are a couple in-person ones here in New York. But it's not quite the same as far as how many people show up for it, you know. And so I think maybe year one for me was all about getting on my feet. Now year two, I'm starting to face the consequences of my bullshit. And it's going to be taking steps to repair things in the past, and it's also going to be you know making efforts, making sure that I stay on this path. And I think part of that is going to be, I'm going to branch out and really make more sober friendships. If I'm someone who, if I settle in my little by myself apartment, or don't make an effort to meet new people, then I will be content with that. But it's not going to make me happy, right? So like year two, I've got to branch out more, and I've got to make sure that I don't get too comfortable, because I don't want it to come off sounding like I am recovered. I'm certainly not at all. Um, And I mean, relapse is a real thing. Lapse is very realistic, and it can happen, and all that we can do is our very best, and for God's sake, keep fucking going if we do.
Hmm. Well, and I mean, New York actually, you have, I believe it's called GSM, the Gay
Yeah.
Sober Pride, which I think is the only one in the U.S.
I
actually.
only found out about that this year, the day after Pride. I'm so pissed that I missed it. They had
Of
they have a huge convention. It's like a thing. The hotel where everybody was staying is directly across from my apartment, and it was like they had signs outside, and I found out about it way too late. But I'm happy to know that it exists. I want to be involved next year because
well,
people travel to it. People
oh
come
my
from
God,
all over the
yes.
country.
Like I'm thinking about going if I can afford it. Just because I'm moving in December and I'm going into sober living, and my dumbass, um, on my way, I went to San Antonio to drop off stuff, which is about 4.5 hours from where I live. On my way home, I broke down
Oh
my
no.
car, and it was like a transmission issue, so I ended up buying a brand new car, and so now I have a $624 a month car payment.
Oh boy.
So it's like it should be okay, but yeah, I mean, I would love to come out there and just meet people. I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, even if you're anti AA, the one thing I would recommend is go into an AA meeting. Say you're brand new, get that packet of phone numbers,
Yeah,
and
people
just
will give you their number and it's overwhelming at first. I was so like, who the hell are you? Get away from me. And but then it's useful, it's helpful. And can I give a little bit of advice with that?
of course.
If people give you their number in AA, when you write their name, put AA and then their name, because then with AA at the beginning of their name in your phone, it will always be at the top of your contacts list. So you can open contacts and start scrolling, and AA is first, and you have a whole list of people that you can text or call if you need to.
See, what's crazy? I don't do the AA because somebody was like, oh, anonymity. So I just put like the group I go to. Well, I'm not gonna say the group name, but it's the initials are SG. So I put SG behind everybody's
Got
name,
it.
so I know
Got
which
it.
group they came from.
Yeah. That was just a
Um,
trick someone taught me when I first
but
started going
that's super
to
smart
meetings.
because I mean, and that's the thing is like whether you reach out to them regarding AA or whether you just reach out to them regarding a struggle you're going through, like you would be fucking surprised on how quickly these people will answer their phones,
Yeah.
return a text message, will pick you up, will
Yeah.
like I mean it's the fellowship I think is the biggest helpfulness in a 12-step fellowship. So so before we come to a close, is there anything that you haven't said that you would like to?
No. No. If I can reiterate, it's just find something that works for you, and like you said, pick and choose and put your own program together, put your own, but there's so many wonderful ways to get sober. uh Make it work, make it happen, because that is more important than anything.
Exactly. Of course, we used to do this. We for I stopped doing it. I don't know why. Being more of a LGBT centered recovery podcast. What would you tell the LGBT person still struggling right now?
Man, that it looks like the only way to be gay and queer is to hang out in bars, and it's not. I just, it's so ingrained in our culture, because it's part of our history, and it's just it there's more to the queer experience than nightlife, you
That's
know.
that's for damn sure.
And you can find it, and it might be hard, it might be easier wherever you live to find a gay bar than to find a LGBTQ center, but it's out there. And now with the online world, there are ways to find it, but yeah, there's more to it than bar culture.
Exactly, and I think too as gay people, there's more to actually having fun and hanging out rather than strictly going to LGBT places.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many restaurants, so many different avenues, venues, concerts, everything. So, of course, with your own podcast, Work or Treat, Horrorcast, and social media. Like if anybody wants to reach out to you, find your podcast, or just talk to you more about cognitive behavioral therapy or smart recovery, how do they get a hold of you?
So me, Ricky, is on Instagram, Rick, the letter R, treat. So Rick or treat. And on Twitter, I'm Rick, the letter R, tweet. So Rick or tweet. I don't really use Twitter. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know. And then the podcast, Rick or Treat Horrorcast, is at Rick or Treat Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. It is available literally anywhere you get podcasts, and it's new. It's a new podcast, just like a month old. So I'm really loving it, and give it a listen. Check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ricky, so much for hopping on today. And I look forward to hopping on your podcast and discussing either the 13 Ghosts or how they used real dead bodies within the Poltergeist.
Poltergeist, hell yeah! All right, we will pick a great movie. I cannot wait to have you on. And Holden, thank you for having me. It's meaningful, kind of around my year mark to share this story.
Of course. You have a wonderful day, okay?
You too. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you again for listening to today's episode. Hit that follow button to be notified about new episodes every week. If you'd like to reach out to us, you can find us on Instagram at The Sober Unicorn Podcast or on our website at thesoberunicornpodcast.com. There you will find our episodes as well as our very own sober owned shop featuring products from small businesses that are sober owned. And remember everyone, don't be normal, be a unicorn, but better yet, be a sober unicorn.